watching St. Michael's Journal, the Journal of Exorcism. In recent episodes of St. Michael's Journal, we have reported on the curious hearings held by Congress on the subject of unidentified aerial phenomenon, extraterrestrial aliens, and the threat these unknown entities might pose to national security. We have previously noted the irony in that even hardcore UFO believers, those that want nothing more than to prove the existence of extraterrestrial entities, are skeptical of the many startling revelations made by whistleblowers during their testimony. As we have also observed that there is indeed a choir of voices, one that is rising to a crescendo, that insist that these sightings of the strange and unusual are not indicative of extraterrestrial visits, but rather a continuance of the ages-old harassment and oppression from Satan himself. In this episode, we will look at these claims as well as other possible explanations for the phenomena thought to be UFOs, UAPs, or alien abduction. First, we examine the work of Dr. Hugh Ross, who, along with Kenneth Samples and Mark Clark, co-authored the book Lights in the Sky and Little Green Men, a rational Christian look at UFOs and extraterrestrials. Dr. Ross has made the circuit promoting the book, speaking to both groups as well as media influencers, and always repeats with consistency the same discourse. He always explains to his audience the following point, which inspired us to use the phrase as the title of this episode. He states, "I took a course from Carl Sagan when I was at the University of Toronto. He was extremely dismissive of UFOs, but that was because his worldview would not tolerate the possibility of non-physical reality. As a Christian, my worldview does tolerate that possibility. God created another realm independent of the universe for the angels." Of course, Dr. Sagan was not the only astrophysicist skeptical of the UFO, or now UAP, narrative. A narrative that insists these entities are from some far distant planet. Also note Dr. Ross's statement about God creating an independent realm for angels. This, by extension, would also include those angels that rebelled against God's authority and were cast out. Consider this excerpt from the Bible. "Now, war arose in heaven, Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. But he was defeated, and there was no longer any place for them in heaven. And the great dragon was thrown down, that ancient serpent, who is called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him." From the book of Revelations, chapter 12, verses 7 to 9. Indeed, there are around 100 verses in the Bible in reference to Satan and his army of fallen angels being cast out of heaven. This alternate reality or realm that Dr. Ross speaks of was created for the angels according to Ross and others that agree with his hypothesis. Dr. Ross reflects on when he was an amateur astronomer before he became a professional, and while an amateur astronomer, he always wound up to be the one tasked by the astronomy club or the universities where he was studying to deal with reports of UFOs. He states that, due to the number of reports he examined, he became somewhat of an expert in this field. He says, "So without any intent on my own part, I wound up becoming an expert on UFOs, and I can tell you that about 99% of what people report to me as UFOs are phenomena that are naturally explained. They're hoaxes or secret military activity that's going on. When I look at the 1% residual, it has the property of defying the laws of physics, and yet, in many cases, we can prove that the phenomena is real. We're dealing with non-physical reality." Everything that we see around us, as well as the heavens above, constitute a physical reality, a reality that can be touched, smelled, measured, and quantified. Scientists can experiment with elements of this reality, record the methodology used, and publish their findings. And other scientists can recreate the experiment to see if they arrive at the same conclusions. A non-physical reality, such as that Dr. Ross speaks of, defies these conditions, but yet is often encountered by a select few. Dr. Ross is not alone in his opinion that what we are dealing with, UFOs, are not necessarily from another part of the universe, but from another reality, another dimension. As we mentioned in our episode titled Close Encounters of the Paranormal Kind, Steven Spielberg is said to have based his fictional character, Claude Lacombe, in the motion picture on Jacques Vallée, a French astronomer who has studied and published several books on the UFO phenomenon. Vallée has suggested that we are dealing with interdimensional beings and not extraterrestrial aliens. Beings not from another planet, but rather from another realm or alternative reality. Consider the synopsis given on Amazon for his book Passport to Magonia, From Folklore to Flying Saucers. Our age has generated and continues to generate mythical material almost unparalleled in quantity and quality in the rich records of human imagination. More precisely, people have very frequently reported the observation of wonderful aerial objects, variously designated as flying saucers, unidentified flying objects, and so on. But investigators have neglected to recognize one important perspective of the phenomenon: the fact that beliefs identical to those held today have reoccurred throughout recorded history and under forms best adapted to the believer's country, race, and social regime. Emissaries from these supernatural abodes come to Earth, sometimes under human form and sometimes as monsters. They perform wonders. They serve man or fight him. They influence civilizations through mystical revelation. The emissaries that Vallée spoke of are what most of us think of as angels and demons. Dr. Ross explains, reports of alien encounters also mirror what some have experienced during claims of demonic activity, he said. From going into trances to engaging in automatic writing, Ross believes the parallels between demonic possession and purported interactions with extraterrestrials cannot be ignored. Ross goes on to say, we tell people who are having these UFO encounters to read the book. There's a list of occult activities that invite the demons, the fallen angels, to invade your life. If you get rid of all the occult activities in your life, there will be no more UFO encounters. There seems to be a considerable amount of evidence gathered by researchers through interviews with those who have reported close encounters and even abduction by these so-called aliens, evidence that supports Dr. Ross's statement that distancing oneself from the occult will end such encounters. More on this subject later in this presentation. Dr. Ross also stresses the same point that other skeptics have voiced, that these things defy the laws of physics. This aspect is one to consider when trying to make up your mind as to what exactly are these things in the sky. While Ross admits that 99% of sightings can be rationally explained, there is a 1% that must be questioned. He asserts, so what we see in this 1% residual, for example, is UFOs coming through our atmosphere at 5 to 18,000 miles per hour, but the witnesses never report a sonic boom or any evidence of heat friction behind the UFO. If this was a physical craft coming through our atmosphere, you would easily hear sonic booms. So, for example, when the space shuttle comes through our atmosphere, you get two loud sonic booms and you see a trail of heat friction. We don't see that with UFOs, but there are 2,000 documented cases where observers see the UFO going through the atmosphere and it crashes into the Earth. And when you go to the crash site, you see a shallow crater. If there's snow, the snow is melted and the vegetation is damaged. But when you investigate the crater site, you can't find any artifacts or debris. Again, it's a physical craft. There would be debris. There'd be some kind of physical artifacts that people could pick up, and we don't see that. As St. Michael's Journal has previously reported, Neil deGrasse Tyson, the influencer that is thought of as the current face of science, has questioned why it is that with practically everyone having a camera in their hands, smartphones, that no one has ever taken a sharp picture of a UFO that could not be explained as a hoax or natural occurring phenomena. I believe that Dr. Tyson makes a valid point. Just as Dr. Ross pointed out, that these entities travel to the sky at thousands of miles an hour but leave no sonic boom. Of course, fuzzy picture seems to be the hallmark of any photograph of paranormal activity. Consider the fuzzy pictures of ghosts, Bigfoot, and the Loch Ness Monster. All photos taken to date have been out of focus or fuzzy, but displaying an anomalous shape. Could it be that all things paranormal are of a non-physical reality and therefore cannot be photographed? The blog titled A Different Perspective, a commentary on UFOs, paranormal events, and related topics, in a post dated 3 September 2023, asks, why aren't there high-quality UFO pictures today? The author suggests that UFOs emit an electromagnetic field, not unlike the EMP or electromagnetic pulse that is the result of a nuclear explosion. An electromagnetic pulse such as that after a nuclear device has been detonated has a detrimental effect on all electronic devices within range, rendering them useless if not totally destroyed. A Different Perspective blog tells the story of how in Levelland, Texas, on November 2nd, 1957, dozens of people reported to Sheriff Wire Clem that their cars were stalled by the close approach of a UFO. While in books and motion pictures, a close encounter with UFO phenomena is depicted as causing cars to totally stop functioning, only to miraculously restart after the entity departs. In this review of the Levelland incident, A Different Perspective reports that only one driver claimed a spontaneous restarting of the automobile, while others noted that their cars could be started normally once the entity departed. A Different Perspective writes, The point here is that we have evidence that some UFOs generate a field that can alter the proper performance of a vehicle's engine. The EM field also interferes the operation of the radio, and there are many reports of a close approach of a UFO can dim streetlights, knock radio and TV stations off the air, and cause other reported effects, including responses from animals. Could there be another explanation why vehicles and electronic equipment malfunction when subjected to close contact with the reportedly alien constructs? Consider the following. Brent Swancer at Mysterious Universe writes about how machines can become haunted and function abnormally. He writes, an early account of a machine that was either haunted, possessed, or both brings us back to the year 1949. It revolves around a dairy farmer by the name of Lawrence A. Wilkinson, who owned a dairy farm in a sparsely inhabited, rough and remote area near the sleepy little village of Tarcutta in New South Wales, Australia. Life on the farm had been quiet and not eventful for years until one day when a group of visitors to the farm witnessed in broad daylight a milking machine that just spontaneously, partly disassembled itself, with the parts then hovering in the air momentarily before being flung away with great force. Some of these parts were quite large and heavy, including a 2-pound brass part and a 65-pound cast iron axle, some of which were hurled hundreds of yards away. Swancer goes on to tell of documented cases in which televisions and computers would spontaneously turn on only to reveal threatening typewritten messages. In one such case, a computer owner in Great Britain showed copies of the seemingly unintelligible messages to a linguist and was informed that the messages were written in a Middle English dialect that was common 500 years ago. Interestingly, this event took place before the victims had internet service available, ruling out the possibility of the machine being hacked by a malicious culprit that was otherwise human. In another similar case involving a computer, Swanson reports that the machine would behave normally during the day only to display strange messages and make eerie sounds when the machine was unplugged from the power source. The Mysterious Universe piece by Mr. Swancer also notes a story that was covered by the BBC and videotaped for the evening news. It seems an historic hotel had been demolished, leaving the elevator standing. This elevator was filmed spontaneously going through the motions of moving from floor to floor, the door opening and closing, lights flashing, while totally disconnected from any source of electricity. So it would seem that while cars may cease to run during a close encounter with a UFO, similar electronic devices cease to operate or behave erratically due to other paranormal phenomena. Could it be possible that the source of these seemingly unrelated events can be attributed to spiritual entities and not those from another world? Another interesting aspect of the alien UFO mythology is the so-called alien implants, devices thought to be implanted into a human involuntarily. One such typical account can be found online. In this report, the victim states that he became a runner after he left the military in 1979 and went to the emergency room in 2012 after his leg became numb. An X-ray revealed an unusual object just above the knee that resembled an RFID chip, one of those devices commonly found in product packaging intended to thwart shoplifting. While the victim explains that he might have suffered an alien abduction years earlier, he does not state on his website that the device was or was not removed from his body. Many other such claims of implants, stories that began in that 1950s, share a curious commonality with another paranormal activity, that of the demonically possessed victims expelling objects that resemble nails, such as those used to nail Christ to the cross, crucifixes, and even broken glass. However, according to eyewitness reports, these items, like alien implants, all dissolve into a foamy-like substance not long after being exposed to air. In the 2011 movie The Rite, a scene in which Rosaria, a 16-year-old girl possessed by a demon, regurgitates objects that look like nails. In this scene, Marta Gastini plays the part of Rosaria, while Sir Anthony Hopkins performs as the Jesuit exorcist Father Lucas Stravant. The producers of The Rite based this scene on a real-life story from Matt Baglio's non-fiction book titled The Rite. Baglio, in an interview with Time magazine, had this to say about the interviews he conducted with various exorcists. But usually, the more dramatic cases deal with people who are screaming, using their voice, shoving, punching, and getting up, smacking their head against the wall. Just very violent. And that voice is beyond a simple mimic of a strange voice. It's very uncanny, very unnatural. And then, of course, there's vomiting, which is common. Father Carmine saw a case where a woman vomited up a small black toad that was still alive. He went to catch it, and it dissolved into saliva. I had another priest who I talked to who dealt with a woman who vomited up 7 little black nails, 6 of which dissolved into this black liquid. The late Father Gabriel Amorth, upon whose work the Russell Crowe movie, The Pope's Exorcist, is based, told this shockingly story of how he had seen possessed people vomit glass and spit nails. There are many other reports of priests as well as Protestant ministers witnessing the phenomenon of the possessed expelling objects. Some claim to still have the objects in their possession, but have not allowed the artifacts to be examined. Ironically, we find in reports of alien artifacts being removed from human victims the same reports of the artifact dissolving into a liquid state. All reports of these so-called alien implants turn out to be natural biological tissue, objects such as stone or metal that are native to Earth, or these anomalous objects that disappear. One has to ask if the origin of these objects is really extraterrestrial or paranormal. The subject of alien implants is also quite often associated with reports of alien abduction. Alien abduction is a phenomenon that has been carefully studied by psychologists, sociologists, as well as men and women of religious faith. Numerous books and documentaries have been produced. Mysteriously appearing scars and other physical effects presumed to be caused by these alien creatures have been examined, photographed, and documented. Dr. Ross, who we reported on earlier in this presentation, has noted that individuals that have such close encounters often experience extreme nightmares and after effects, Many victims state that they continue to be abducted multiple times over a period of several years. Some of these victims then are forced to endure years of therapy to help them overcome the aftereffects that resemble post-traumatic stress syndrome. While scientists and mental health specialists seem to be at an impasse as to what the phenomenon really is, groups of ministers and lay people have independently researched the phenomenon and come away with the conclusion that these close encounters are not extraterrestrial in nature, but rather, as Dr. Ross speculates, in the realm of the demonic. One such group shares on its website a quote by Arthur C. Clarke, the renowned British science fiction author and inventor who held degrees in both mathematics and physics. Clarke is most famous for his short stories and novels. Among them, 2001: A Space Odyssey, which is considered to be a benchmark in science fiction literature and the inspiration for the classic motion picture of the same name. Clarke said, "One theory, which can no longer be taken very seriously, is that UFOs are interstellar spaceships." I think it's fair to say Clarke probably made a chunk of change writing about aliens visiting Earth as fictional. But he also didn't think that which we Earthlings are currently experiencing actually was aliens from outer space either. The Christian researchers at Alien Resistance make the following statement. But in light of all the paranormal phenomena that's been documented the last century, specifically so many thousands of extremely well-documented cases of beings claiming to be aliens, the question really becomes, is the extraterrestrial hypothesis the best explanation for the reported alien abductions and UFO sighting phenomena? After researching the topic thoroughly, the consensus among Christian researchers is that the answer is a resounding no. The evidence which Christian researchers have documented over the decades to arrive at what's known as the demonic hypothesis. After interviewing literally hundreds of victims who reported an alien abduction experience since 1997, the victims have been able to immediately terminate the event by invoking the holy name of Jesus Christ, even when the experiences were reoccurring over a protracted period of time. You can read the written testimonies of the victims who have successfully terminated the alien abduction experience at the Alien Resistance website. The link is in the description. The CE4 Research Group, the investigative arm of alienresistance.org, reports finding something truly remarkable. On their website, we find the following statement. During investigations into the experiencer's case testimonies, CE4 Research Group found something really remarkable. They found that some of these Christian alien abduction experiencers had been able to stop or even terminate the experience from their lives. The most fascinating finding was that this was even possible, and there was a commonality amongst the experiencers in the way that they were able to do this. This is something that the world's leading researchers in this field of investigation say is not possible. But the findings of CE4 Research Group show otherwise. When questioned off the record, many of these leading world researchers admit they themselves have come across similar cases. The question arises, why have they not shared these findings also? Could it be because of what the consequences might be if they did share? Might it change their preconceived notions of the alien abduction and UFO experience? Alien Resistance claims to have encountered hostile resistance from the UFO research community when they try to bring this piece of the puzzle to the table. Is it possible that the whole UFO, UAP, alien abduction narrative has taken on the mantle of a religious belief structure? Could a perceived threat through their religious tenets be the justification for the animosity toward those that have connected the proverbial dots, only to find that there is an undeniable similarity of the UFO alien experience to the ages-old mythos of demonic oppression and possession? For that matter, could there be a similar connection between the sightings of cryptozoological beasts such as Sasquatch, the Loch Ness Monster, and the abominable snowman or Yeti, to reports of demons, ghosts, hauntings, and other phenomena that goes bump in the night? Perhaps all these things that terrify or cause human obsessions originate from a singular source: the fallen angel known as Lucifer, the devil himself. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for joining us today and to ask that if you enjoyed this presentation, to please click on the like and subscribe buttons. The cases of paranormal related events described in this episode are intended to raise the audience's awareness of religious and spiritually related topics. St. Michael's Journal is a part of the St. Michael's Media Publishing Group, a publishing ministry of the Archdiocese of St. Michael's, a liturgical and sacramental church. Finally, if you feel called to become a warrior in the battle against evil, follow this link or see the links in the video description for more information. This video may cite or contain material which is copyrighted by other individuals or secular entities. We do not claim possession of the rights to that material, but redistribute it or provide links to such under fair use doctrines for not-for-profit religious educational purposes. Finally, until we meet again, may the blessing of God be with you, the peace of Christ be upon you, and the power of the Holy Spirit live in you now and always. Amen.